Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to talk about the guilt. The guilt that comes from being in a relationship with the narcissist. So, have you ever felt guilt for leaving a relationship, for not speaking up when you needed to speak up, for staying silent when you need to speak up, and almost everything you did in the relationship? Have you ever felt for doing all of those? Being in a relationship with a narcissist, the guilt, the feeling of guilt is very common when you're in a relationship with a narcissist. But it's not random, it is conditioned. The narcissist condition you to feel that guilt. And it is one of the strongest tools narcissists use to keep you trapped in the relationship. People in narcissistic relationship often feel guilty for everything. They feel guilty for saying something. They feel guilty for not saying enough. They feel guilty for upsetting the narcissist. They feel guilty for not attending a family gathering or a function. They feel guilty for not making the relationship work, not investing enough in the relationship. They feel guilty for not figuring things out sooner, and even after they leave the relationship, they feel the guilt of leaving that relationship. Many survivors even carry the guilt and accusation of breaking the relationship or breaking the family. And over time, this guilt turns into belief. They start believing that maybe they are the real problem in the relationship, that they are not good enough to continue the relationship. The two primary emotions the survivors carry in narcissistic relationships are shame and guilt. Even when the survivors logically know that they are not the bad ones, emotionally they still feel like they have done something bad while being in a relationship with the narcissist. This shame that the survivor feels often does not belong to them. It's a projected shame that the narcissist refuses to feel and dump onto the survivor. Narcissists are masters of blame shifting, so they shift their all wrongdoings onto the survivor. They shame them for not contributing enough in the relationship. They shame them for not being supportive enough. They shame them for not trying hard enough, even though they know that they are the one who is doing all of this. Narcissists do not take responsibility or accountability for ruining the relationship. They shift all this aggression onto the survivor because taking accountability or responsibility means admitting that they are wrong, and they would never do that. There is another layer of shame that the survivors carry. It is the shame of being in the relationship itself with the narcissist. Deep down, victims know that something is wrong in the relationship. But when they tries to explain it to others, others don't understand it. So they know that society or outsiders will always blame them for the relationship or the things that happening in the relationship because victims are easier to blame. So survivors begin to doubt their own thoughts and perception. They start thinking there must be something wrong with me. There must be something wrong with me for choosing this kind of person again and again for the relationship. And that self-doubt becomes another chain keeping them stuck in the relationship with the narcissist. The emotion or the feeling of guilt is very crucial for the narcissist because when you feel guilty, you compromise with yourself. You tolerate behavior that you shouldn't tolerate. You stay longer than you should, and you excuse abuse again and again. So here is how it works. The narcissist convinces you that you did something terrible, something wrong. They shame you for it. You feel guilty, and that guilt keeps you attached to the narcissist and the relationship. Guilt is the glue that holds the narcissistic relationship together, and the narcissist knows this very well, and they use it on you again and again. Unlike survivors, narcissists do not feel guilt the same way. They do not feel guilty of anything that they did or they do, and they lack empathy and a functioning conscience. So, survivors, on the other hand, are usually empathetic, self reflective, and emotionally aware. So, when a narcissist accuses them of being selfish, rude, or arrogant, they often internalize all of those instead of dismissing. They think that maybe the narcissist is right, maybe they are the real problem, and slowly they take responsibility for the things that were never their fault. People often ask, why don't you just leave the relationship? But it is easier said than done because attachment is complicated, trauma is complicated, and humans are complicated. Because the longer someone stays in a relationship with the narcissist, the harder it becomes to leave that relationship. The longer they stay in the relationship with the narcissist, the more safety oriented the relationship becomes. Because the push and pull dynamic of the relationship makes them feel safe and familiar and even addictive. So that familiar pain start to make them feel safe than the unfamiliar peace that they are going to experience if they leave the relationship. Even though they know that the relationship is unhealthy, they are unable to leave it. Over time, this push and pull dynamic damages their attachment style. Survivors often develop anxious, avoidant, and insecure attachment style in the relationship with the narcissist, and this does not just affect one relationship, it affects their future relationships too. This is why many survivors experience repeated failed relationships and then blame themselves for that. Eventually, many survivors reach a moment of clarity. They start recognizing patterns, they start seeing the manipulation in the relationship, they start seeing the blame shifting, and they see the lack of accountability in the relationship. And for the first time, they realize that they are not the problem. This is where the healing begins for them. When they stop taking responsibility for someone else's behavior. In narcissistic families, this guilt is even stronger. Children often carry a deep shame for their parents' behavior. It's incredibly hard for a child to accept the fact that their own parents have harmful intentions for them. So instead of blaming their parents, they blame themselves. They believe that they are unliable, they are broken, and they grow up feeling broken. They feel that they are not normal. This guilt holds them back from trusting themselves totally and from being in a healthy relationship. And it also restricts them from being their true self. And that is what the narcissists want, and they become successful in doing that. Guilt keeps victims trapped, especially in narcissistic families. And even after leaving, they feel guilt for doubting themselves and for wanting better for themselves. That's why awareness is very critical and important. When you understand narcissistic manipulation and their tactics, guilt loses its power. You begin to understand that you are not the problem. You were never the problem. It was always the narcissist. So keep spreading the awareness, keep learning about narcissist and narcissism and narcissistic personality disorder. And please like and subscribe this